We're back on record at 12:57 p.m. Please continue.
So I wanted to talk about some of the meetings that LuLaRoe would hold for IFRs that we've mentioned at various times this morning, both meetings and calls. So the first one would be the annual convention. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
That's referred to as Vision. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Is that something you've attended?
Yes.
Do you usually attend it?
Yes.
Always?
Yes.
Okay. Are you involved in planning for convention in any way?
Very little.
Have you ever been involved in any aspects of planning for convention?
Yes.
What aspects?
Curriculum, review of registered attendees, as far as how many have registered, how many have not. Overall objectives of the event. Meeting structure. About it.
Are you involved in each year in convention in those ways, or has it varied year by year?
It's varied.
Okay. Let's talk about the curriculum. What input have you provided towards curriculum in conventions?
It would just be reviewing what's planned for curriculum.
And who usually plans that curriculum?
The sales and field development team.
What people in that team are involved in that?
Kenny primarily. And then whatever team members he would engage on his team.
So is that more something where Kenny would develop a curriculum and ask for your input in it,
Yeah.
into it?
Yeah.
What subject matters do you recall providing input into?
I don't recall all of them. I don't recall specific details.
So you're also involved in the planning of the overall objectives of the event? What does that mean?
High level. Are we bringing value? Are we strengthening the brand? Are we delivering on the expectations of retailers when it comes into requests on ways that they can improve their business?
Are those objectives consistent year by year?
No.
How do they change?
They change based off of input from the field, whatever the sales and field development teams are gathering in surveys and conversations, observations. They would shape the training based on a number of factors.
What sort of surveys?
I don't know the content of the surveys. It would be surveys asking about what specific things would you like to learn from this event, areas that you feel you and your peers could benefit from. So very subjective.
Who's responsible for those surveys?
I don't know who's responsible for those.
You said you have reviewed the registered attendees. What did you mean by that?
Just more of a head count, how many people would be in attendance. There'd be times where we might look to see if we have a high percentage of leaders that would be in attendance. that sort of thing.
Why would you want to know whether there'd be a high percentage of leaders in attendance?
I think it would be an indication what teams might be represented.
And teams of retailers.
Yeah.
When you attend convention, what is your role at the event itself?
Observer, occasional teacher.
What things have you taught at convention in the past?
I don't recall all. Typically it would be around leadership and coaching.
When you say coaching, do you mean that you're providing coaching or you're teaching how to coach?
Both.
I think you mentioned at some point this morning training tours.
Mm-hmm.
What are those?
Those are regional events that the home office and other retailers will train and present on a myriad of topics for that region. Mm-hmm. So they would be an open invitation for anybody that would want to attend that event from the base of retailers.
Those sometimes also referred to as tours.
Yeah, tour stops.
Tour stops.
Yeah.
Have you ever attended any of the tour stops?
Yes.
How often do you attend?
I don't even know. It varies.
Who's involved in planning the tour stops?
Objection form.
That's the sales and field development team.
So Kenny again?
Yeah, Kenny, and then under the direction of Deanne.
Have you ever taught at any of the tour stops?
Yes.
What subjects?
I don't recall.
Have you ever been asked for input on other trainings for the tour stops other than the ones you taught?
Other than to review agenda and objective, no.
Generally, what are the objectives of the tour stops?
To help the retailers improve their business.
Improve their business how?
Whatever way they see fit.
What types of subjects are taught in the tour stop trainings?
Objection form.
Sales technique, product updates, different incentive programs that might be in play, any home office announcements, peer-to-peer training. That's about it.
How to build a team?
No, not per se.
And you said incentive programs. What are you referring to there?
An example would be the cruise incentive. So they might update that region on what the rules of the program are, what the qualifications might be, where the cruise might be happening. So it would be a specific
Has the agenda
specific program.
Sorry.
You're fine.
Has the agenda ever included trainings or discussions surrounding the leadership bonus plan?
Not that I can recall.
LuLaRoe also has an annual cruise, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever
Yes.
attended?
Yes, I have.
Do you always attend?
No.
How many cruises have you attended?
I don't recall.
Did you attend last year's?
Yes.
Year before that?
I think I attended one of two the year before that.
Do you have any input in planning for the cruise?
No.
Do you have any input in planning for any of the trainings offered at the cruise?
Outside of what I've described here, more feedback and questions.
What is your role at the cruise itself, if you attend?
Similar, observe and be there to help support any initiatives that might come up.
We talked earlier about the weekly home office calls for retailers.
Yeah.
Retailers are offered like a dial-in information for those calls. Is that right? Or how do they participate?
At present, they would receive a link in their email that would be the location of that webinar.
Are you at all involved in helping plan for the content of those calls?
No.
Are you ever asked for your input into the agenda for those calls?
Not at present.
Have you ever been in the past?
Not any different than what we've described here.
So general input?
Yeah.
Have you ever participated in any of LuLaRoe's weekly calls for certain subsets of IFRs, for example, a coach's call or a mentor's call?
Are you asking if I've ever participated in any of those?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
In what capacity?
Mostly an observer, occasionally to present something on leadership development or a thought.
Who's responsible for organizing those calls?
That would be under Kenny and Deanne's jurisdiction.
Have you ever been asked for input in the content in any of those calls?
I'm sure I have, but I don't recall the context or detail.
Have you ever heard of an opportunity call?
I've heard the term.
What's your understanding of what that means?
To my knowledge, it would be a call in which the business is discussed in general to new retailers.
Would it include people who have not yet signed up to be a retailer but are interested?
I guess that it could be, yes.
Okay. Have you ever participated in any of the opportunity calls?
Not that I recall.
Have you ever been asked for input in planning the opportunity calls?
No.
Do you know whether LuLaRoe still has opportunity calls regularly?
Not that I'm aware of.
Do you know when they stopped?
I don't.
You heard of something called the Q Club?
Yes.
What's your understanding what that means?
My understanding is it was a waiting list of pending or entrepreneurs that wanted to become a independent retailer.
And there were regular calls for those individuals?
I don't know.
Yeah. Did you ever hear about Q Club calls
I've heard the term, but I don't know what that would have consisted of.
Did you ever participate in any of the Q Club calls?
No.
Okay. Were you ever asked for input into what should be covered for the Q Club calls?
No.
Have you ever voiced a concern that independent retailer efforts in sales need to be duplicatable?
Without context, I don't know what that would relate to.
You don't recall ever discussing whether certain IFR efforts in sales are capable of duplication?
Again, without the context, I can't answer that.
Have you ever been asked for input regarding any training agendas or materials regarding how to recruit potential retailers?
No.
Have you ever been asked for input regarding trainings on how to sell LuLaRoe products?
No.
Have you ever asked for input on any trainings regarding how to use social media in a LuLaRoe business?
No.
You've been handed what's been marked as Exhibit 271, which is base numbered LLR-WA 000244942. Give you a moment to take a look.
Okay.
Do you recognize the document?
I recognize the format.
Okay, it looks to be an email from you to Kenny Brady on October 19th, 2014. Is that accurate?
From the heading, it looks as so.
Okay. And it looks like at the bottom it has a signature, and it looks like at the time you were working through Service Quest. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay.
Again, it's a signature block.
Signature block. Do you recall helping Kenny regarding a field training in October 2014?
I don't recall the details, no.
Do you know where this training was intended to be?
I don't. From what I read in this email, it appears to do with Lake Las Vegas.
Do you recall attending a training in Lake Las Vegas?
I don't.
Do you recall whether LuLaRoe had a training in Lake Las Vegas that year?
I don't. The only training I know of at Lake Las Vegas would have been the President's Council meeting.
What President's Council meeting are you referring to?
It's the one you
that
were
we talked
asking me
to?
about earlier, yes.
Okay. You can put that aside. And it was marked as Exhibit 272. It's numbered LOR-WA 000-26870. I'll give you a minute. Do you recognize this document?
I recognize the format.
It appears to be an email from you dated May 13th, 2015 to Deanne.
It's the specific attendees would be those ranked leaders, where they're learning more about the leadership aspects of their business.
We spoke earlier today about the different ranks of retailers, and I think we talked about trainers, coaches, and mentors. Before there were coaches and mentors, there was one combined rank called leaders, correct?
I don't recall.
What's your understanding of what a leader is in the context of LuLaRoe?
I would say anybody that's a sponsor or that has influence within the community that they serve.
Anyone who is a sponsor or has influence?
Influence in the community that they serve, in their home, in their impact and influence.
And what do you mean impact and influence? In what way?
Just as a father and mother have impact in their home and influence with their children, I would say anybody that's assembled with more than one person has some impact and influence on another individual.
So sometimes people with influence would also be asked to attend leadership?
Not that I'm aware of.
But in your definition of a leader, you included anyone who has influence?
In what context?
I asked you what's your understanding of a leader, and I believe you said, anyone who's a sponsor or anyone who has influence.
Yeah, let me separate those two thoughts.
Okay, sure.
A leader in general, my definition would be anybody that has impact and influence. Non-related to any entity or any specific form.
Okay.
As they're referred to at LuLaRoe, it would be a ranked individual, would be a classified leader.
Have you ever heard of certain retailers referred to as influencers within LuLaRoe?
Not as a formal title, no.
Have you ever heard anyone referred to as influencers informally?
Under the context of having influence in somebody's life, I haven't heard it used in any other way.
Have you ever heard of any LuLaRoe retailer referred to as an influencer in the context that you just described?
No.
So going back to the calls that you were making, you said it was a fact-finding mission for the training.
Yes.
Were you asked to engage in that fact-finding?
I don't know what I was asked to do other than what I can see here is taking notes on calls that were made.
Okay. So you called the various retailers that are outlined in your notes?
Yes.
Okay. And it appears from the email that the calls took place over 2 days, subject to leadership calls from yesterday and today.
That's what it appears.
Is that consistent with your recollection?
I don't recall.
Okay. In what context?
I don't recall.
You know you've been asked that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall the specific policies that you were asked to communicate about?
No.
Do you recall any specific retailers you were asked to communicate with?
Not specifically.
Who were you asked to communicate about a retailer not following a policy by? Who asked you?
It could be a myriad of people. I don't recall.
Who are the people who have asked you in the past?
Again, I don't recall.
So you don't recall who asked you, you don't recall who you spoke with or the policies, but you're certain that you have been asked.
Correct.
You can ask and answer.
If I could finish my question. But you are certain that you have been asked to communicate with retailers who had not followed LuLaRoe policy?
Yes.
Do you recall any details about those?
No.
Have you ever been asked on input regarding LuLaRoe's policies?
No, already answered that.
Is it your understanding that LuLaRoe places restrictions on how an IFR can sell LuLaRoe products in retail locations?
Objection form.
Under what context?
Is it your understanding that, are there any restrictions?
I'm not that I'm aware of.
Is it your understanding that there are any restrictions relating to retailers selling LuLaRoe products online?
Not at present, no.
Have there ever been?
I believe so.
What were those restrictions?
I don't recall.
Has LuLaRoe ever placed any restrictions on retailers' recruitment?
Objection form.
I don't understand the context on that.
Has LuLaRoe ever placed any rules surrounding how retailers can recruit IFRs to sponsor?
I don't ever recall any conversations about that.
To your understanding, has LuLaRoe ever placed any rules regarding that?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm handed what's been marked as Exhibit 273, which is base numbered LLR-WA 00007763. I'll give you a moment to take a look.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the document that's Exhibit 273?
Nope.
Have you seen it before?
Nope.
It looks like it's an email string that you're included on. Do you have any reason to believe that you didn't see it at the time that it was sent?
May have, may not have. I don't know. I don't recall.
Okay, well, if you look down on the first page, about 3 emails down, there's an email that said February 17th, 2016 from you. Do you see that?
Yep.
Okay. Did you send that email?
I don't know if I sent it or not.
Do you have any reason to believe you did not?
No.
Okay. Do you recall the issue with the end-of-the-year reports that is being discussed in this email?
No, I don't recall the issue other than what I've communicated here is that it looks as though there's a discrepancy and it was a call to action to fix a discrepancy rather than communicate something that's not correct.
Do you know whether the end-of-the-year reports were fixed?
I don't know.
That's fine. and it's what's been marked as Exhibit 274, LLR-WA 0003756. Give you a moment to take a look.
Okay.
This appears to be an email from Shauna Fromm to a group of people, including yourself, dated January 31st, 2013. Who is Shauna Fromm?
She was an employee at one time in charge of PR, some marketing, and some communications.
And she starts off the email saying, "Hi all," to recap our conversation. Then she has a list of bullet points. Do you recall the conversation referenced here?
I don't.
Okay. Seen it before?
I have not.
What's your understanding of what Bless is?
Bless is a point of sale system.
Okay. Was Bless being rolled out or having a new feature added during this time period?
I don't know particularly.
In the bullet point list on the first page from Shauna, the third bullet point down, she referenced as the Ambassador Council.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
That would be what, similar to the President's Council, it was a changed name. I believe the last of three councils, formal councils, was named the Ambassador Council.
Okay, so you earlier, when we were talking about President's Council, you said
Yes.
there were 3 iterations. So the first 2 were President's Council, and the third was the Ambassador's Council?
That's correct. Yeah.
How often are you asked to do that?
Not very often.
Are you asked to do it when the subject matter is particularly sensitive?
No.
What's your understanding of why you're asked to review for tone?
Objection, form, foundation.
It would just be what's his overall messaging and energy for the event coming up.
Have you ever heard anyone express any concerns about the tone of any of Mark's messages to the field?
I've heard of individuals at times not I guess I'd say not liking his tone, but I don't know the context in which that would have been offered up.
Do you recall any specific talks to the field that he gave where a concern about his tone was raised?
Not specifically.
Do you recall what subject matters were covered when you heard of individuals not liking his tone?
No.
Okay, you could put that aside. Do you recall a series of videos that LuLaRoe produced called University, YOUNIVERSITY?
I don't.
Have you ever heard of the term university, spelled YOU?
It seems vaguely familiar, but I really don't recall any specifics.
Do you ever recall there being plans to set up a physical training center called University?
No.
You mentioned in the context of trainings a cruise incentive earlier.
Mm-hmm.
What is your understanding of what the cruise incentive is?
Objection form, asked and answered.
The cruise incentive would be an annual incentive program based on sales performance.
What is the current cruise incentive?
I don't know the details.
Do you recall what the cruise incentive was prior to July 2017?
I don't.
Is it your understanding of whether the cruise incentive prior to 2017 was based on sales or wholesale orders?
I don't
Objection
recall.
form.
Handed what's been marked as Exhibit 275, LLR-WA 000239192. Give you a moment to take a look.
Okay.
So this is an email from you to Mark Stidham dated February 21st, 2014, and the subject is 2014 cruise incentive. Do you recall whether this was the first year that a cruise was offered by LuLaRoe?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you recall providing input into a cruise incentive document in 2014?
I don't recall, other than what's being presented right here.
Does it appear to you that you were providing input into a cruise incentive document here?
Yes, it appears so.
Okay. The first line, the second sentence of the first line refers to FCs. Does that refer to fashion consultants?
I would guess so.
Okay. I think that's what retailers were called at the time. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I don't recall, but in this context, I'm assuming so.
Okay. Do you know whether the draft cruise incentive discussed in this email was ever implemented?
I don't.
Okay. You can put that aside. Handed what's been marked as Exhibit 276, Bates numbered LLR-WA 000-66221. Give you a moment.
Okay.
So this is an email string. The second part of the string is an email from you dated November 17th, 2015 to Adam Campbell. Who is Adam Campbell?
I believe he was a project manager with a company called Control Pad.
Was Control Pad doing work for LuLaRoe?
Yes, they were a technology vendor.
Do you recall what type of work they were doing?
I believe that they were developing and building the Audrey point of sale system and just the database for retailers.
I appear to get 2 copies of that, council.
Orders.
Objection form.
I don't recall at that time.
Do you recall how the company was generally addressing back orders at the time?
Objection
don't.
form.
Are you familiar with the company ever using back order slips when it was unable to fulfill a product order?
I've heard the term used, and that would be consistent with, I believe, periods of time.
Okay, you can put that aside, and I think it's a good time for a break.
We are going off the record at 2:02 p.m.